The following episode may contain inappropriate material. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to another fabulous, wonderful edition of Mattalk. It's Jason and John here, and please excuse me. The reason I'm so amped up and energetic is because we just recorded an interview with Ted Lang from The Love Boat, and that man, his stories were just so utterly fascinating. So if you get time, check that out over on the Three Geeks podcast. But that's not why you're here today. John is the king of the plugs. I'm sure he doesn't mind me plugging that because it features both of us. But we're here to talk about Matlock. And one of the cool things that just happened is I found out Ted, who was a big fan of John and I's, is friends with Mr. Keen Holiday. So I'm hoping we might finally have an end to getting Keen Holiday. But in the meantime, before Keen Holiday shows up, if you have any contact for Keen Holiday, please reach out to us at Ben, B-E-N, Mattalk, M-A-T-T-A-L-K, at gmail.com. That's benmattalk at gmail.com. John, tell the people about benmattalk at gmail.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to try to keep him from saying the email address 17 times like last episode, but I'm excited too because Ted Lang, just a great time talking to him. In fact, he mentioned a young lady by the name of Audra Lindley, who of course is Mrs. Roper from Three's Company. He told a great story about her and Milton Berle. And she is going to be one of the people that we're going to be talking about in this episode of Matlock. So it's kind of like 6 degrees of separation, so to speak. I encourage everyone, when Jason releases the Ted Lang interview, you need to check it out on the Three Geeks Facebook page and Three Geeks across all the media, because it was so much fun. And let's be honest, it went almost an hour. Did you think we were going to go an hour, Jason, when we sat down at the beginning?
I always sit down and plan the interviews for 30 minutes. And if the guest is fascinating, like Ted was, and we could probably have gone another 20 minutes, but I know we wanted to get to recording Mattalk. But the man had stories for days, and we didn't even cover more than 3 things on his resume. So, But that's not why these people tuned in. They want to hear about Mary Ann Nelson's book, The Author.
All right. Well, with that, then, let's not waste any time. Jason, let's get on into our opening statements. As you mentioned, the title of this episode is The Author, and it originally aired on January 13th, 1987, and we have a few guest stars. And in fact, we already talked about one. The very first guest star playing the role of Mary Ann Newton is Audra Lindley, best known for playing Mrs. Roper in Three's Company. Our second one is a little more obscure, and you and I talked off air about it. The other person that we need to talk about is Brian James, who's playing the role of Mr. Grok. But for you sci-fi fantasy enthusiasts, you may remember him as Leon, the replicant from Blade Runner. Now, Jason, you had mentioned you've never seen Blade Runner, correct?
I have not seen Blade Runner. It's one I need to sit down and watch.
It's worth a view. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I think it's a good film. I watched the regular version because there's 4 different versions apparently, and I'm like, I just watched the regular one. It was okay.
The main reason I want to see Blade Runner is because I've heard Blade Runner 2049 is a masterpiece, and I gotta watch the original before I can watch the new one.
I felt the same way about Blade Runner 2049. I thought it was okay. Wasn't great, wasn't terrible. In the middle. All right, and our last guest star, Jason, it's a humdinger. We're talking about Mr. Parker Stevenson playing the role of Dr. Egan. And yeah, Parker Stevenson, he's best known for his role as Craig on Baywatch. Were you a fan of Baywatch?
Make that reference. I've never seen an episode of Baywatch.
Really?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yep. I used to watch them run on the beach at the beginning, and then I just turned the show off because I didn't care about the show.
No, I would say that I've watched a fair share of Baywatch episodes.
John's like, that's brilliant. You mean I could have just watched the beginning and turned the show off?
Yeah, exactly. Dude, I had the hugest crush on Erica Eleniak on Baywatch. Of course, she was also in E.T. as Elliot's kid sister.
Elliot.
Yeah, she was also in Steven Seagal's movie Under Siege, where she jumps out of the cake topless. Which, by the way, that's where I stopped watching that film after the cake scene. I'm like, that's it. I don't need to see anymore. I've seen what I need to see. Anyways, you know what? We're way off track. We need to get back on track, don't we?
That's right, man.
People don't care about, people jumping out of cakes and Steven Seagal and other things. They care about Matlock, and let's get on into it. So shall we, Jason?
I mean, this podcast is rated PG-13, so, little innuendo is fine. But anyway, yeah, continue. Let's get into this.
Are you ready to give an opinion, your opinion, so help you?
I absolutely am. I love giving my opinion.
Then let's get ready to testify. All right, here's the plot of The Author. An author's new book causes controversy in a very small town and the murder of a respected reverend. And Ben has been hired to defend the doctor accused of the killing. I will say this is the most happy, delightful opening scene that I've seen on Matlock in a very long time. Just how it opened with the nice birds chirping and the sun rising and the countryside there. That was great. And then we cut to TV reporter Carl Burke as he wants to talk to everyone in Hastings, Georgia about the book, Secret Confessions. And it seems, Jason, no one wants to talk to him except Dr. Egan, who makes some subtle threats to the author, Mary Ann Newton. What do you think of this Carl Burke character? Because he seemed a little bit like he was hamming it up a little bit. What do you think?
They were playing up the fact that they wanted us to think this guy was guilty. Like, it was obvious that this was going to be, the guy that everybody thought was guilty. Yeah, and actually, John, this episode, they don't show us who the killer is, but I figured out who the killer was immediately.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll get to who the killer is, but I'm surprised by that because it took me a little bit of time. I'll be honest, I thought Carl Burke would have had something to do with the murder in this episode, because this is the way that he was presented. The very first thing you see him is him being very over the top and aggressive in his reporting, and so that's where I went. All right, but let's talk a little bit though about Secret Confessions, so the listeners know exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about a book that's based in a very small town, and it talks about the people and the town, and it's relatively loosely based on Hastings, Georgia. So that means, Jason, accusations, rumor, innuendo is going to be tossed all around. You don't know who's sleeping with who's stealing what. You don't know. And this book supposedly told you all of that.
Yeah. And if Tyler has anything to do with it, he'll be sleeping with some people too. Or painting rooms for him. Sorry, off track. I love Tyler.
Well, we have a drive-by egging, by the way. Somebody gets Mrs. Newton's car, but guess what? It's not going to be investigated by the police chief. I think the police chief is pretty damn lazy, if you ask me.
He is. Sorry, yeah, no, 100% lazy.
Reverend DeLuca shows up at Mary Ann's home and is shot to death, which that was kind of, I was kind of not suspecting that. I didn't figure that the Reverend would be a target. I thought he would be there just to console Mary Ann. But Ben and the police chief are pals. And you gotta love it, Jason, when you can just show up at your friend's place of work and just pick up with a game of checkers that hasn't been played in 3 months. How about that?
I thought the victim would be the author. That's what I thought we were setting up for.
I did too. I thought that she was going to be, Mary Ann was going to be the one to be killed and not the Reverend. That's why, yeah, it was really weird. It was really super weird and surprising. Well, Dr. Egan is arrested and Ben is given the case by the police chief. And then I wrote this down in capital letters. Everyone has read the book. It seems everyone in this town has read the book. You gotta love small town Georgia, that everybody's so fascinated with a book that's loosely based on their town that it seems everyone has read it.
Well, if it's based on the town, I could see that. Now, if it was like at Atlanta, Georgia, and we were talking about this small town and everybody had read about this small town, it'd be a lot more far-fetched to read. But people love hearing the gossip about their neighbors. People love it.
I guess.
I mean, if there is a police siren on a street in the nicer neighborhoods, I can't speak for the nicer neighborhoods, but everybody's always out on their lawn looking and telling each other. It's from Dane Cook does a bit on this where, people are asking each other where they were when they saw the cops pull up. Like, it is just so intense. So I get it. My mom would have read that book 12 times over.
And then told you about it every night at dinner too, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Ben visits Dr. Egan in jail, and I didn't understand this at all. Ben pretends not to be himself so that Egan would hire him. This is totally not necessary to the plot. Like, I was like, what is this? Did you agree with me that this is bizarre, or did it just go right over your head and you're like, I don't even care?
It was a little weird.
Here's my second thing that I wrote in capital letters. Everyone wants Marjorie Sawyer. I will say this. It did make me very curious to find out who this character was, because you hear all about her and how everybody's hot to trot for her. And I was like, I can't wait to see Marjorie. And she does show up at the end of the episode. We'll talk more about that. But yeah, she seems to be the cat's meow in Hastings. So Marianne admits that Reverend DeLuca was getting some of the charity from the proceeds of the novel, despite its tawdry content. Now, Jason, this is where I started thinking about some things, because why would the good Reverend want to perpetuate filth? Why?
For money.
Right. I agree, for money. But I just thought that was weird. Like, it's like you're the Reverend, you're the good Reverend. You're not supposed to be judgy. And you know what I mean?
Yeah, Judgy Ben, Judgy Reverends. What is happening in Atlanta?
I don't know. I want to meet a character named Mrs. Gleason. And Mrs. Gleason apparently is sleeping around. Her character in the book is sleeping around, and in reality, she is sleeping around. I will say this was a good highlight for me. I really did enjoy her confrontation with Charlene, where they exchanged where Charlene kind of questions her about, her whereabouts and her activities and whatnot. And then Charlene finds out a clue. She finds out that someone named Bill has sent flowers to Mrs. Gleason. Ooh, and the plot thickens.
Dun, dun, dun. We really need more of that in Matlock. Dun, dun, dun.
Well, I'm sure at that point, maybe Andy did not appreciate that. That's why it's not in there. Because remember, as we've learned, Andy Griffith runs a tight ship.
Dun, dun, dun. Speaking of, if you think that Matlock should have had more dun dun dun,
stop. I promised them you're not going to do this episode. Stop.
BenMattalk@gmail.com. Go ahead, John.
The listeners are going to be like, we hope they don't ever interview anybody before they record Mattalk. So,
hey man, the energy's fun. People like our chemistry. We almost got a movie deal with Ted Lange.
Okay. All right, Ben visits Mark Douglas and his jewelry store. Ben thinks it's a little bit suspicious, and he has Tyler scam Mark's girlfriend into getting some info. I thought this was kind of sneaky here. Tyler is a house appraiser, and the houses in the neighborhood are going to be trashed anyways for a highway. But he gets entry into the house, right? So the girlfriend's like, oh, I'm going to fix you a cup of tea after Tyler suggested it. This is the thing I don't like. Tyler goes and plays the answering machine while Jessie, the girlfriend, is in the other room, but she doesn't hear it?
I mean, you would think she would hear it. I thought the same thing. What are you doing? She's going to hear you.
Yeah.
Not like answering machines where they are now. You just have your cell phone, you put it up to your ear, and you listen to the message.
Right. No. Yeah, exactly. It's like, and not only that, but the message incriminates you because it's, can you lie about an alibi where I was? So,
answering machines are so loud.
Yeah, especially in the 80s.
And then you hear, hey, it's Matt, call me.
Exactly. Also, too, I don't know, and I don't want to cast aspersions, but as a mother, it just lets a stranger into the house. You have a kid. Like, what are you doing? Like, it's 1987. What are you doing? You're letting any old person come in the house?
They're trustworthy and they want to show their neighborhood they're not racist.
Well, I suppose so, that they're trustworthy and not racist.
In the 80s, people loved to show they weren't racist.
Well, okay, I'll take your word on that. All right, Charlene discovers that Mrs. Gleason isn't a tramp. I'm going to use that term because that'll be a more polite term. She actually is volunteering at an old folks' home. So she kind of is automatically ruled out as a suspect because her character in the book is a tramp. She is not a tramp, so that eliminates her, which is probably some pretty weak detective work if you ask me.
The lady is a tramp.
All right, Ben cross-examines the police chief, and the best evidence that Ben has is the size of someone's shoes. And then Ben goes to show how he would rig it, like you could wear bigger shoes by putting socks down in them. This is lame. This is just so terrible. This is so lame. I mean, it's still not as bad as if you look towards that door. That defense was pretty bad, but this is shockingly bad, Jason.
This episode is like, they were like, all right, I know that we have this, but we have room for one more script that we can just throw in here, but it has to be done by tomorrow morning. And then they hammered this script out.
Yeah, that's how this feels. Mm-hmm. So Ben brokers a deal with Jessie to keep her custody of her son, and then discovers Grok was in a meeting with Mark. And let's just talk about Mr. Grok. Man, oh man, that's some hair. That's some hair. That's like some platinum blonde that didn't really dye real well. Oh my gosh. Oh God. Man, oh man. There's no 80s fashion in this episode, but there's some 80s hair.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a dye job that bad since I did it back in 95. So Mark and Grok are exchanging jewels, and it's stated that they were doing this illegal deal the night of the murder. And then I believe that both Mark Douglas and Mr. Grok are arrested, and we see another scene of Ben playing checkers with the police chief and gushing over Marjorie. But our main man, Tyler, shows up with evidence, and there's no explanation of how he found it. We don't even know what it is. He just shows up with it. We're a little light on the Tyler on this episode, aren't we?
Yeah. I was really excited because I was promised a certain Tyler subplot, and I never got it. I even watched this episode 2 more times looking for this subplot, thinking that maybe I missed it. And then you told me, so I didn't watch it a 4th time.
Okay. For the listeners at home, I would just like you all to know that I accidentally forgot that I saw this really cool Tyler bit teaching a child to pick locks, and I told Jason about it. Unfortunately, I mistakenly thought it was in this episode. It wasn't. It was in the Me TV episode that I watched earlier that day. Accidents happen.
That's why Jason stays authentic.
Hashtag authentic, indeed. I'm sorry.
Even though it's hard not to binge. It's hard not to binge. And I told you I was going to watch some Jake and the Fat Man before we recorded this.
Yeah.
I have not yet. I will get it done before our next recording session.
Okay, good, because I want your 2 cents worth on Jake and the Fat Man.
Okay.
All right, back to the episode. Ben visits Marianne to review the facts of the case, and he notices something about the carpet. We also notice that Marianne has a word processor. Secret Confessions was written on a typewriter. As a matter of fact, Jason, whose typewriter? Reverend DeLuca's typewriter.
Yes, it was, because, dun, 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 she may not have been the author of this book.
That's right. He has been sending out manuscripts for years to publishers, and he got no luck. But when he agreed to use Marianne's name when Secret Confessions got picked up, there you go.
And John, a fun little trivia thing about the preacher, and that is the preacher who wrote the murder mystery resembles Andrew Greeley, the real-life Catholic priest who wrote a number of best-selling mysteries.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. Well, here's a quick question for you. Did you have a word processor, or have you always been a computer guy?
I had a keyboard, or not a keyboard, typewriter.
Okay.
I had
electric typewriter, not the old school typewriter, but electric.
I had the old school typewriter because I wanted one because of Murder She Wrote, because I was a kid who liked shows that for an older generation, and I had an Apple II that had a printer with it that took like 45 minutes to print half a page.
Okay. I had a word processor. I did not have a typewriter. I went right to the word processor, and that son of a gun was loud when it printed. That's all I'm going to say. So
I don't think I ever used a typewriter to type anything except to do this, which is put my fingers up and down like they do in the movies where they're trying to bang out the script real quick.
Well, do you still have that typewriter?
No.
Oh, okay.
I don't think so.
You could dust it off when we write a script that Ted's going to direct us in for our movie debut. Anyways, all right, let's move on here. Mary Ann shot Reverend DeLuca, and here's how this went down. Basically, she had the ability to run outside of the house, shoot the Reverend through the window because she was supposedly getting him tea. Mr. Sears would come to the window, but by that time, and Mr. Sears, by the way, was the gentleman who walked his dog every single night at 11 o'clock. But Mr. Sears would come to the window, but by that time, Mary Ann was already back in the house, and Sears will see the shocked Mary Ann. She drops the tea tray, and there you go. So, and then later on, apparently, Mary Ann frames Egan by placing the gun in his car. What do you think, Jason?
The reason I knew he didn't do it, one, is because he was outside. And like again,
who, Mr. Seas or Dr. Egan?
Dr. Egan.
Okay.
And they were obviously aiming it to be him. And the only other person there was her. And I'm like, well, she could have easily shot him, grabbed the thing, came back around. Maybe she knew that dude was there and then dropped it. So she looked shocked that this all happened, which is a perfect setup to a murder.
I did not see this. And I wrote down, I think this plan seems very unlikely for an elderly woman to pull off. I'm sorry. I'm going to say it. I think like to drop to run outside, shoot, run back inside, put the gun in the glove box. All right. And here's the other thing. Why Dr. Egan?
I don't know, but if you got hate mail about John's opinions towards the elderly, you can send that to benmattalk@gmail.com. Okay.
Anywho. Yeah, it's never really explained why Egan. Just because he made a subtle threat, I thought that was kind of lame. Why would you go to all that trouble? But I will give Audra Lindley credit that her performance in the courtroom as Mary Ann was very, very good. I thought it was very convincing. I liked it a lot. So I thought that especially that final scene where Ben and her are interacting in the courtroom, I thought it was really good. So here you go. Jason, we got to meet Marjorie Sawyer at the end of the episode. What do you think? Was she worth all the hype?
No,
I don't. I was somewhat disappointed. I was like, okay, she's a pretty lady, but I expected, supermodel, caliber type of young lady. And the worst part is, the police chief, he swindles Marjorie on his arm away from Ben. Man, Ben needs to pick up the game a little bit.
Yeah, but Ben just doesn't seem like he's looking right now.
No,
we never get a backstory about Ben's wife, do we, in any of these? Ex-wife?
Oh, that's a good question. I believe there is going to be a backstory, but I think it's subsequent seasons much later.
Okay.
I believe. So I'm not 100% on that, but I'm like 90% sure that there's a backstory. Well, Jason, it's time for closing statements. This is the part of the episode where we rate this particular episode. We rate it on a gavel system. 5 gavels means it was absolutely awesome. 1 gavel means it was pretty lousy. We will also justify why we gave this rating. And so with that, Jason, would you like to go first?
Sure. I got 2 trivia notes from IMDb. 1, this was the last appearance of Eddie Quaylen. And the computer Mary Ann Newton used is a Commodore 128.
Really? All right, well, what'd you think overall? How many gavels do you give it?
2.
Okay.
And that's because everything, honestly, part of this episode, I've watched it 3 times, just parts I don't remember. And I think it's because it's not one that really sticks with you. And the fact that I was able to figure it out at the very beginning, I don't know, because, I liked some of the episodes where they show us who killed him at the beginning. But for some reason, this one just wasn't it for me.
I gave it 3 gavels. I like the performance of Audra Lindley. I thought she did a good job. I enjoyed the mystery of Marjorie, even though, because I was like, I can't wait to see what this lady looks like. And, I enjoyed also Charlene and Gleason's interactions. I thought they were good. I didn't like the murder plot. I thought it was too complex. And it's never explained why is it Dr. Egan. And honestly, Dr. Egan wasn't in the episode that much. Parker Stevenson was like in 3 scenes, and that was it. And so I agree with what you said earlier when we were making fun and we were joking. It seems like this was like 3 different plots or maybe 3 different sections of plots from other episodes that they just jammed together into one. There was a lot of continuity and maybe some coherence issues when it comes to the author. So I gave it 3.
Yeah, I wasn't feeling this episode. It might be because I was expecting this amazing Tyler Hudson subplot.
Oh, stop it.
I didn't get it.
You know, again, no one's perfect, man. No one's perfect. All right, but you know what? Let's go ahead and wrap things up. Let's talk about some other podcasting projects. Jason, you got some?
Yeah, John and I, we actually got a pretty big announcement. This podcast is getting syndicated.
That's right.
Saturday at noon, starting on the 23rd, I believe that's right. We will be syndicated on the Scene Snobs Network. I couldn't be more excited. Mick reached out to me, which John and I's other podcasts are also syndicated on the same network. And Mick reached out to me and said, I'd really like to have Mattalk on my channel. I was really surprised. And I said, absolutely, man. I love what you do. I said, we don't really utilize YouTube as much as we should just because of time. It takes time to upload. So I'm sure this is going to pop up on the Scene Snobs YouTube channel, which will be great for publicity and just getting the word out there. And so, yeah, this is going to air on Saturdays at noon. And I believe we're still, we and John haven't discussed this yet, but I think our lives will also be Saturdays at noon on this channel as well.
And we are going to, with the Scene Snobs, I believe, correct, Jason, that you will be starting from the beginning. So if you want to catch the back catalog, it's starting on the 23rd with episode 1, and they're going to work our way through. Eventually we'll get caught up. We'll be synced up. But for the first few months, maybe you missed an episode. There you go. You got a great opportunity to listen. Thanks again to Mick for extending the offer. We really do appreciate it. The Scene Snobs, they got a lot of great podcasts. Let's give them a quick plug. I mean, they got tons of podcasts over there. Crossing the Streams with Jeff Dwoskin, the Scene Snobs podcast, the BTB podcast. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. The Fandom Effect is over there. The Showcase. So they got tons of podcasts of all different types of subjects and whatnot. Check them out, thescenesnobs.com, or through Facebook. Just search for The Scene Snobs, and it's right there. So,
hey, Mick has the second best name in this business next to John Orlando, and it is Mick Manhattan. So I thought about becoming Jason Japan, but John told me no. So I will not be referred to as Jason Japan.
All right, but also, Jason, where can you find the 3 Geeks? Like, what's your website and all that jazz?
You can find us on the Scene Snobs as well. Also, 3geeks.ninja, Facebook, 3 Geeks Podcast, Instagram, 3 Geeks Podcast, Twitter, 3 Geeks Podcast. We have 3 Geeks Podcast everywhere. Tune in, please, because we have a lot of cool stuff coming up. Next week, we are interviewing Renee Jacobs from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated series from the early 90s. I'm excited about that. The Ted Lange interview will be dropping before this episode drops. So by the time you guys hear this, you can go back, check out the Ted Lange interview because he was absolutely fascinating. And the interviews will also be on the Scene Snobs channels on Friday at 6 o'clock.
All right, and likewise for me, the PVDcast is my personal podcast. It's available at pvdcast.com. Also, wherever you find podcasts, whether you're talking about Stitcher Radio or Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. As we mentioned, also it's on the Scene Snobs every Tuesday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm also doing live broadcasts on Monday nights, 8 o'clock on the PVDcast Facebook page, which is at PVDcast. Jason, I need to let them know about Mattalk social media. First of all, Facebook page is at Mattalk Podcast, and Twitter is at Mattalk_podcast. And I know you're going to give us some grief. We're working on that Twitter. It's a little bit tough to try to get a following on Twitter nowadays, for various different reasons. But Jason, is there an email where people can shoot an email to us about Mattalk?
Yes, Twitter is difficult, especially when you have other projects that you're also promoting on Twitter. But it is BNMATTALK@gmail.com. And if you got the connections to Keen Holiday, I'm still waiting. Just email me right there, please.
All right, fingers crossed we're going to get in touch with them. But Jason, with that, let's get on out of here, if you will. So thanks for checking out another episode of Mattalk, ladies and gentlemen. We really do appreciate it. And with that, as they say in court,
don't be a jackass.
Well, they do say that in Matlock's courtroom, yes. But as they say in court, nothing further.
The following has been a joint production of the Three Geeks podcast and
And that's our show, everybody. Thanks for listening. I am Mick Manhattan, the Scene Snob. We always appreciate you guys tuning in and commenting along and everything else. Go check out this show or any of our other shows on thescenesnobs.com. Thescenesnobs.com. We love you. You guys are awesome. And if you would like, follow and subscribe to our social media. That really helps us go a long way. And please spread the word. Tell your friends. Have them come in. We love feedback and everything else. So everybody, you have a great day.